I kind of feel blessed in that way. Getting hit so many times at a younger age doesn't hurt as much somewhere. And I think that has allowed me to get, you know, those types of rejections later on. It's been a little easier, like, and it happens all the time. You know, I mean, I think that's a constant in what we do. You know, that's why people think we're funny people. I mean, what I know from, I don't know if this really, but I know from being on both sides of auditioning with people once I've gotten a role and then auditioning for a role, is one of the biggest things is I feel that when you're on the opposite side, where an actor walks in and you're about to read with them and you just want them to kill it. Like, that's the biggest thing. You want them to come in and be amazing. And so often on the opposite side, you walk in feeling so afraid that you're going to be judged, you know? And what are they going to think, and what do I need to hit, and all that stuff. And it's just become so clear to me that it has nothing to do with that. There's actually much more positive out there than we assume. Even when the rejection seems negative, you know, rejection is always said that it just doesn't feel that way. It's sort of like, I mean, look, I'll give you an example. There's an amazing actor I just worked with on the last movie I did, and his name is Riz Ahmed, and the part that was written as an Asian role, and Riz came in, and that's not his, you know, race, and he came in and was extraordinary. The heart of the character came out for the director, and I was in the scene with him, and I was like, oh my God, you know, oh my God, and everything changed. Now, you know, that's possible anywhere. You know, that there are no boundaries. Because something is written a certain way doesn't mean it has to be that way. You know, and I mean, that's a testament to the fact that, like, you know, people say no, don't, no, you can't, no, just do it. Like, we've done it for ourselves, you know, like, we've committed to that thing for ourselves, and then no matter what anybody says, it, you know, but you can get the part too, and then you get the part, and then it comes out, and then people say, oh, you're bad in it. That's a rejection. Or, oh my God, you're so good in it. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It just matters that you go and you leave it out on the field. You know, that's. If we actually were doing a second take, I wouldn't have cut. I would have continued in the weirdness of that moment, and I think that moments like that are essential. You know, they always open up into something interesting when it's uncomfortable for everybody. It's like that. It's like that moment when, and as an actor, you stop yourself and you're in the middle of a take, and I used to do that early on and be like, oh no, let me start again, let me go back. And I don't do that anymore. Like, in moments where I feel like I've flubbed a line or something strange is happening that the universe is giving to you, I think of it as a gift, you know? And it has always opened me up into someplace more interesting. Well, all of our weird idiosyncrasies, it's like, that's the best stuff.
Exactly.
That's why we watch people give performances, I think. So it's like, you know, watching all of our human stuff.
When I think
there's this like desire for some sort of, someone will, I hear people say a lot, like, well, honestly, or like, I say it too. I say like, well, honestly, well, truthfully, and we're like, I oftentimes wonder what that means. Why we have to preface something with that. I mean, I don't know what there is to hide. I mean, and this is coming from someone who's like I'm a very private person too, you know, but I think you can't get rid of you no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, well.
You know, when you feel most comfortable is when you're allowed to show those things, you know, and you're so used to, I think, in this world, you know, going hard and trying to like do your best, and you know, because you've been through it, whether you're auditioning for something and trying to get a role, or hundreds of auditions later and you finally get something, and then you're like, okay, I'm here, you know, and I'm going to do this. It's like, feels like it's always some sort of fight, you know, but really it's about taking that fight away and connecting. And you're right, like, this is your space.
And David is definitely one of those guys.
Oh, he creates that community.
Yeah.
David created that community, you know. He kind of, moves into the background in that space to allow this thing to happen, but he's right in there and he's with you all the time. And I think he started from a school of real collaboration, you know, all those guys, like they all did that. And I think there's a sense of family where there is no real line between fiction and nonfiction. In that space, you're just kind of all creating together.
Or between who's in charge and who's not.
Yeah,
It's like-
that's exactly that. There is no hierarchy on a David Gordon Green set, and someone described him as the least toxic director they've ever worked with. And I think it's true. I think it's really true. And when I look back on the process with him, I always say really wonderful directors are sort of master manipulators. Some people they're sort of moving you in one direction or the other. Sometimes you're very aware of the manipulation, and it's a bit of a turn on in that space, and then sometimes you're not, and it's happening, and then you see it later. But in the case of David, I think he sort of is so inclusive that is not, manipulation is probably sounds like a darker word, but I think it's moving in the direction of what the piece is about, which is about sort of keeping your heart open and showing your vulnerability, and that's what David was doing.
And kind of who David is.
It is who David is, yeah. And also a real simplicity, you know? I think it's super hard to do simple. And he really knows how to create that space, the sort of simplicity in his storytelling. If there's somebody who's just brilliant, which a number of those guys are, you just do what they say, because they see something, and you're in their movie. Sometimes they want you to do what they say, sometimes they want to hear your ideas. Whatever they want from you, you know, don't fight it so hard, because in the end, you know, it's their movie. So it's their story. And they're going to shape it the way they want to shape it. You know, if something seems really stupid, or you're compromised, then fight for yourself, you know. But or for the character, I think. But when you're working with people like that, there's no stupid choices, you know. I mean, I just want somebody who really just believes that what I'm doing is. You just want to be believed in. That's all we want. And even if you're being like pushed to a level that's hard for you to be, or a feeling that's hard to deal with, or whatever it is, you just want to feel that belief. I mean, when you're working with somebody who's sensitive and who understands you and who you understand, who's the leader of something, that makes everything. And that was why I initially really wanted to do Prisoners. And I knew that would lead into an interesting performance somewhere, because he wanted who I was. He wanted my ideas. He believed in them. And I in his. And so, I don't know. I mean, I learned in End of Watch about relationships and about how important those types of friendships and intimacies are. It's what that movie is about. And I think that's what I realized with Denis Villeneuve, the director of Prisoners, was you need to move towards the people who believe in you. You know, more than anything, more than any role, more than any, you know, I think that's what it's about, is working with the people in whatever context, large, small, whatever that even means. It will always be big when the relationship is deep. It will always fulfill that time, you know? I mean, we made End of Watch on $6.5 million. We shot it, every scene in the police car that we have, in a day and a half, and that's like one half of the movie. But the relationships were deep, and so I think that made, you know, time sort of expand. You know? I really just want to find and seek out people that I think are kind of extraordinary, regardless of like hype or whatever, people who move me, and go work with them, and people who think I'm pretty good. And then so that's sort of just what I did, and maybe that has led to all different types of things. I've been in movies where there have been roles where I think the movie is fantastic, the script is fantastic, and we're offered to someone and people say the role's not good enough. I don't believe in that. Like, if the movie's great, you want to be a part of it. It doesn't matter how big it is, it doesn't matter what it is. You can make anything out of anything. Just deliver the pizza. you know? I have no idea what it's about. But the process was amazing. And again, that's, I think part of it too as actors is like, that's not our job. Like, our job is to go and show up and put everything out there for someone else to put together. Like, and I learned that too a year ago, which was I have no control over the result of what happens. I have control over the amount of commitment that I put into the role and the amount of variation that I can give to the director and to the editor and to the producers of the movie to make the best possible movie that they can make. And I will do anything. I will go to the ends of the earth at this point to make sure that they have everything they need to make an extraordinary movie. And if I leave this set with no regrets, which I feel like I have on this last movie I did, I'm happy. That's a piece of advice I got from Chris Cooper when we were making this movie, October Sky. I said, Chris, can you give me one piece of advice, if there's any? And I was 16 years old, you know, and he said, yes, don't have any regrets. And I didn't really know what that meant until, again, a year ago. So, you know, I think that is, we have to just give and give and give as much as we can, and then let it go. Like it can be exhilarating in the case of something like Prisoners, where you have a director who really gets you and saw what you were doing and calibrated in the right way. And it can also be, which is I'm not going to give an example for, sometimes disappointing. And I think that is the beautiful part of it, you know. And in each take, it's the same way. Like take to take, there's a take where you're like, you know, it's just, it sucks. And then there's a take where you feel alive. You walk off your high the rest of the day from the interaction that you've had with somebody or something or anything, and it makes it all worth it. Like, it really, really does. I mean, I was talking on set the other day. I had Donal Mowat, the makeup artist, who's incredible. I remember talking about the script. And Donald is such an inspiration in so many ways, and he'll say things because he's such an artist. Again, like, you need people like that around you who are really interpreting things from another direction that you would never think of, which is obviously an acting coach. Or, and he was like, oh, we were talking about some sort of spiritual thing, and I thought, oh my God, that's in the middle of that script. Whoa, why is Donald saying that? Whoa, is that a sign? You know? Because he had no idea, you know? But like, I believe so deeply in the unconscious. And then I started to get inspired. You know, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then my mind started spinning, and I was like, oh my God, if I hadn't heard that sound, if I hadn't been working with that artist who is not an actor but knows actors so well, you know, whatever, I could go on about that. But that's where it's at. That's where it's at. Movies become so much more than what you've done in them. They humble you, I think. Like, it's when you start to believe that. Peter, my brother-in-law, said to me once, he said, what's so interesting about being a movie actor is you don't have the initial response of an audience. You make something, and then a year later or 6 months later, whatever it is, it comes out. And you can misinterpret the fact that you are that thing, that you are the performance you've given. And you're not the performance you've given. Even if someone says to you, it's incredible, you know, you're not that thing. You've been a part of something with an enormous group of people doing it all together. You're the product of that thing. You know, we know detectives typically as people who are always asking questions. And I wanted to give him something that, you know, the audience, while I was asking questions, were asking questions of him. And I had worked with Roger Deakins before, the cinematographer, who's unbelievable. And Denis and I had worked before. And I sort of expressed that to them. And they do this first shot of that character when you meet him, and it's behind his back. And I had said to them, I just wanted him to be a mystery. And the initial meeting of that character is a mystery, before I even introduce him in my behavior. It's like you're just working in collaboration with people who get what you're doing. So I can't really say that. It was just, to me, I wanted him to be someone who was hiding from his own truth while demanding this truth from other people.
That's the real secret, is make friends with the cinematographer.
That's true, by the way. I really think that they are the story. They are part, like, they're it with the director and the cinematographer. When I knew Roger Deakins was shooting Prisoners, I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in a beautiful frame, your acting is so much better. I mean, you're such a good actor when you're in a really beautiful frame. It's just so true. It's just so sad and true. how much more important their job is. No, really, it's like, that light, that light.
Yeah.
And then, Roger shot JarHead.
Yes.
JarHead. And it was all handheld the way he shot that. And Sam Mendes, who directed the movie, really wanted us to sort of be alive in the scene, and he wanted it to be captured. So there was a reality to it. And I always remember whenever I felt like what I was doing was false, Roger was somewhere else. But whenever I felt like I was somewhere that was honest and present, he was right there with me. Which, again, started to give me an idea of what felt real and what didn't. And he taught me. And then working with him on Prisoners, it was the same thing. But there was much more stillness, and he was much farther away with his camera. But I knew that his light was doing the same thing, because we would block the scene, and then I would walk through the scene, and I would think, in the moments that were not necessarily as honest, I would be in shadow. Or I would be in shadow, and it would be saying something else. And what I was trying to say as an actor wasn't as important as what he was trying to say with his light. And we were working together. And that is so true. I mean, it's so true. Cinematographer, man. I mean, yeah, make friends with them. Working with Dustin Hoffman when I was 20 years old, or 23 or something like that. And I remember Dustin coming up to me and him saying to me, you don't have to do so much. And I was like, what do you, he said, you carry everything inside you already. Like, you could probably just stand there and there's enough that people could watch, And that was expressed actually while we were doing this movie I just did in a way that I really like, which is just deliver the pizza. And that's one of the biggest things I learned, which is, we all carry with us, like, everything we do, like everything we've been through, good, bad, whatever. And if you can show up and just literally just deliver the pizza, like, you'd be all right. Because you're not good, like it's that Leonard Cohen poem about, just speaking poetry, You don't have to be the butterfly flying around, just say the word butterfly. Just say it. Because people will take from that their own experience. Because if you don't give credit to the audience and how intelligent they are and how much they're going to be asking already, then you're done. I have just learned to have great respect for the audience. It also comes again from something my mother taught me, which is that if you want to learn anything, go to the children's section of the library. That if it can't be described in a children's book, then it can't really be described somewhere. It needs to be as simple as possible. My mother always says to me, like, what's the movie about? And it comes from being a writer, I think. But I say, it's about this. No, like in one sentence. What is this movie about? So you can always go back to it. And in the times when it's 6 o'clock in the morning and you have one take, the sun is coming up, nothing you can do, you go back and you say, this is a movie about love. And then, you go and fight the character in the scene. I have to credit my education in having read great books at Columbia and gone through that program and reading the great classic books and the classics and knowing a good story. Knowing how to find a good story. Having a high school teacher who made us read all the great plays, really, and also act scenes from many of them. So what sounds right, what feels right, when the rhythm's right. Those things. Not being afraid, not being afraid of a story, Education is so essential because there's no way of knowing what good material is, or knowing if a story is original, or knowing what makes a story original, or know how to interpret a story, or even to help if you don't have a solid education. It doesn't mean you have to go out and get it, like from a common institution, but to educate yourself is the most important thing. Otherwise, you'll be making blind choices that you're not sure about. My education, my high school education at essentially a prep school, the rigors, the intensity, the focus, the sort of obsessive quality of being able to just keep your head above water in a highly competitive academic environment is similar to the business that we're in, you know. I mean, that focus that I learned in high school, the time that I didn't want to work and I had to, you know, I didn't want to put that extra hour in to learn that piece of information or whatever it was, and then seeing it pay off. I mean, it's happened time and time again on this last movie. We had 28 days, for instance, to shoot this movie. I had massive monologues throughout the whole movie. I mean, it's like pages and pages of dialogue where my character speaks most of the time. And I memorized it like a play so that I could be agile enough that I knew that on the day we'd be flipping around and we'd lose a location, and I was producing the movie as well, so we'd lose something, we have to go over here, and I would be ready. No one would ever be able to say that I wasn't prepared, you know? And I think that came from my education somewhere like at Harvard Westlake, you know, that there was a real rigor to preparation, to learning something inside out, giving it that extra hour that you don't want to give it, you know. And it's been a huge influence. I learned how to write, which really helps with thank you notes, you know. No, and it really does.
It's a lost art.
I know that if I didn't have the education that I had, I wouldn't be able to express the words to the person that I saw and their work that I saw in the way that I wanted to. And that, I mean, I could give you a million examples of how my high school education, my college education has influenced me in my career. But that's just what I was thinking about now, was the way I want to tell him how he moved me, you know. You know, it's good to know how to do that. Like, there's nothing I want more in a scene than the other actor to be amazing.
So did Tatiana come in early into this process?
I would say about 5 months before we started. She came in, and she came in and read, and we read together, and she was incredible, just incredible, and so much more prepared than I was in that moment, and just bold and totally available and present with me, and yeah, just wonderful, like really, really wonderful. And we all walked out of the room and we're like, okay, that's done. And
you guys work in a similar way, or is it?
She's quieter in her process. She's much less noisy, I would say. I think I kind of like clunk around with all of my like weird tools, you know. I'm like making sure everybody knows I'm working, you know, and she's sort of like, she's much quieter, you know. She's like sort of lined her stuff up and is ready to go, and you know. But yes, we do. She's sort of game for anything. She's not one for rules, but she is one for preparation and discipline in the same way that I am, and has the belief that freedom's on the other side of all that. But neither of us, I think, believe in rules, particularly when it comes down to the scene. She's so agile and really courageous. I mean, really courageous. Not afraid. I mean, I'm sure she's afraid at times, but we'll go there.
Her.
Yeah, we'll go there. Yeah.
There's an intimacy to this performance that's kind of breathtaking and surprising, and you realize how much more she has in the tank.
I mean, watching the performance there with her throughout it, watching it being calibrated throughout the post-production process too. She is, I mean, those who already know her, but she's an actress of astonishing range. And yeah, you're right. She's kind of the rock of this whole film. And to be with me in those scenes, I mean, we were truly partners. You know, we'd done so much work, and we had spent so much time with all these people that when it came down to doing the scenes, we were like, are you ready? We were like, I think so, you know, and then we would go for it. And all we really had was each other. And we had... One thing I think about Hugh is that he'll always say thank you. And he says it in the scene. You know, you're in the scene and you make a choice, and there's never a choice that he judges. It's something that I love, because I tend to have those judgments when I don't even mean to. And he just always says thank you. Like, you can feel it from him in the scene. And so I would, you know, give him things or say things to him or try things, and it was constantly that exchange. So it became this exchange of underneath all of it, like, thank you. No, thank you, thank you. And then, and then we did that in the press for the movie, and everyone was like, oh, it's a bromance. Like, there's a, and it's like, it's actually when two actors are not afraid to be vulnerable with each other. His base is from the theater, so I think that comes from that as well. And his sense of just being grateful for what he has and what he's been given. It just is great to work with someone like that. And that positivity leads way to the ability to open the doors into darker places. People don't think that a lot. Keeping your body in shape, keeping your instrument sharp and attuned, that there is a sort of typical thought that, this is a thought I was thinking about, there's a typical thought that if we destroy ourselves for something somewhere, or that we push ourselves to a limit where we hurt ourselves, or, I think, even with like substances or things like that's going to make us better actors. Or that's going to make us, open us up to a place that's more, I don't know. And I don't believe that. And he happens to be someone that doesn't either. And I think that our physicality, our bodies, what we use, like, that is what we use. It is essential. We need to take care of those things, and it leads into that sort of positive way of treating yourself, leads you into having more armor to go into the darker places. You're safer there, like, because you have a couple more tools on your belt when you're fighting those crazy, demons, And I think that I believe in deeply, and I think that Hugh does, and in those scenes, we have that exchange. We have this, through his positivity, like, we go to some pretty dark places, and I love that, I love that. I think the secret to longevity is trying to be good to others in your work. I think that's the secret. And it's really hard when you're in something, like you're playing a character or something, and it's an intense moment, and you are in the scene, and the balance between those things when you're on set and when you're doing that you have to respect the character and the situation they're in. And you have to focus in those moments and not get distracted by the things that are going on set. Because I will many times come on set in a moment that I'm in and know that things are going to come at me. Like they're going to come at me and they're going to affect my animal. Like, that's how I always think about it that way. Like, yeah, they are though, man. They are. Like, that's how I think about it. I was saying about Michael Pena. Like, Michael Pena said to me when we were shooting End of Watch, he's like, an actor's instinct is like a lion in the jungle. He's like, you have to coax it towards you, and everyone has to be quiet. Because if one move is made or a sound is made, it'll scurry away. And so often on a set, no one's paying attention to that, and nor should they. We all should be doing our jobs as well as we can. And to move an enormous light makes a lot of noise. And to set something up and put a microphone on you is someone else's job, and they have to futz with you. And you wear every department on you as an actor. That's what I realized. You can misinterpret the fact that, like, it's all about you because you wear every department. You wear the costume department, you wear the sound department, you wear the props department. You have it all on you, And I just think that within that space where you have to be true to the instinct that you have, you also have to learn how to express. Like, again, I said before I started this movie I said, look, guys, I may not come in every day ready to smile and say hello. I am in a different mindset. I'm putting myself there. But I want to prep you for that. I want you to know that. And I don't think being good to people is always just like being nice, and that's something I learned from Hugh Jackman. But I think that it's about being honest about what you're doing and where you are, And that is longevity. Longevity is, look, we're all complicated human beings. We all have all the things we're struggling with. Well, I'll speak for myself. I have a lot of things I struggle with, and a lot of things that I'm grappling with, and a lot of things I love about myself, and other things that I'm working on, other things I don't. And if you can be honest about those things in your performance and with the people you're working with, and you feel safe in that space, then you will work, and people will understand. And that's just about being honest and being good. Because I saw Hugh fight for what he needed. for that space, for the story he believed in. He's not always like Mr. like, hey, you know? That's why I love him. Because he's not somebody who comes in and is like, I don't know, he's not faking it. He is a positive guy. That is possible, to be a positive person. Like, to be a nice person and not be fake. But you also have to get tough sometimes too. In service of your character, in service of the story, in service of the time that you have, in service of the time you don't have. You know, it's all important. And that is where the longevity lies, I think.
Would you ever consider leaving acting?
I consider it every day. But I think that's just part of the whole, you know, smorgasbord of the profession, is like the sort of the oddity of it, and like the fight with it as well as the love of it. It's like both. I think this business tends to perpetuate competition, and don't get me wrong, I'm very competitive, mostly with myself, you know, and I think that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that it should be fun, but I think you get really lost. And now that I feel like I'm a little bit older, when I talk to actors of another generation, I think that the business can make you look at others and say like, oh, what are they doing? Why did they get, as an actor in particular? Because you're powerless.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're like, what are they doing? Why, you know, and it's such a profound waste of time, and it's also distracting you from the real work.
Mm-hmm.
And the real work is working on the character, working on the thing that you have at hand. If you don't have a character to play, finding a character to play, even if it's like going to Samuel French and picking up a book and finding a character you love and doing that. I think it can be incredibly distracting. That's why we need to be more together, because what we do is strangely so sensitive and weirdly misunderstood at times, and totally understood, you know, and looked at as something that's, but to be together and to say like, wasn't that crazy as a community is so important. Like being on stage, that's the thing. I particularly in musical theater, one of the most wonderful moments I had in that entire process of doing Sunday in the Park with George was that, you know, because it's musical theater, which I'd never experienced before, there are swings, you know, we had different actors playing one part and then would come in if somebody left. Mm-hmm. And because it's singing, because it's through the seasons, and, you know, people get sick and something happens, there are a lot of swings all the time. Yeah. And people covering other people's parts, and all of a sudden you turn and the guy who was playing that part last night is now playing the other part in a whole different, the same costume that's sort of a little ill-fitting, and you're on stage with them. And you would always walk through the show. You always walk through the show with whoever's swinging, you know, the part. I mean, after a long run, I'm sure some people don't, but at least in my case, that's what we did. We'd come down, we'd walk through the scenes that needed to be walked through. Mm-hmm. And I saw such an incredible support for the actor playing the role. Not competition of like, oh, go, like, what are you doing? Do it right. The other person did it. It was just all love. And huge support from the cast underneath someone who was filling the shoes of someone else that were so unfamiliar to them. And I think that I think is why, as competitive as theater can be and as brutal as it can be, and it can be, I think that feeling, and even from like Annalie Ashford, who's in the show with me, her heart was just always open. She's like always there for everybody, and there's such profound equality everywhere. I don't know, there's a lot that, you know, movie actors could learn from that process.
Yeah. But theater people are like, sometimes like British actors, there's a sense of the work being the key thing and not all the, you know, external benefits and downsides and all that stuff. And it's hard to do that in Hollywood. It's, you know, this town is very small.
Yeah, I think it is about the work. But I also think what's amazing about movie actors is that it's about minutia, and it's about an honesty that is captured so close that it takes a certain type of courage, that from afar it's very different. From 20 feet, expression is very different from 20 inches. And there's a lot that I think theater actors can also learn from movie actors in exchange for a potential sense of rehearsal and craft and just doing the work, yes. But I think it just varies. But you can't like clump anyone into one type of personality. But I mean, I do think like when you show up eight nights a week, 8 shows a week, I mean, it's just different, you like, it's just a different experience. I mean, I think it's great because it's I think it's great because it's just like it's feels like a consistent job, You know where you're going every night, and like the room you're going to, and the costume you're putting on, and a location doesn't change because somebody there's just a consistency to it. I really believe in it. It's a magical thing, it really is. And when you watch somebody up there doing something at you go to the beginning of a run and then you go to the end of the run and you see how something evolves. Like, I remember going to seeing Hamilton at the Public, then seeing at the opening night of Hamilton, then seeing Hamilton about a couple months later, and then seeing it as it was towards the end. And it was so interesting because I only know this now because I hadn't done a musical for over a long period of time, but they change the conductor, and like there's so many subs on Broadway of musicians. And I could feel the actors, one of the like deep into the run, kind of going like, oh, the rhythm's weird here. It feels wrong, and it's like, what's going on? Like it was, but I think that experience of watching a process is really freeing, Like it has to be a process. This pressure of like getting something right, it just doesn't. I don't think it doesn't really lead to anywhere good, I do like to work. I believe in hard work. I definitely believe in hard work.
Do you leave any holes in your schedule at this point, or 'cause it does seem like if you're not shooting a movie, you're on stage somewhere?
I think that doing theater did nothing but sort of allow me to trust those instincts and move towards them even more. But as a human being, it's always, I think, those little moments are always the moments that make you feel like you're moving away from convention or what you thought a scene was supposed to be or what you think a situation is supposed to be, are always what people love. I mean, it's what I love as an actor, when something's totally in the moment, where there's the unknown everywhere. So, I mean, yes, I think there's the unknown everywhere when you're on the stage, but there's great consistency there that you don't have on a movie set. You are going to get to the theater at 6 or 7 or whenever you do it. And if you do Sleep No More, it's probably 11 p.m. or whatever. But different. I mean, usually it's very consistent. And I, on a movie set, it's like, oh, well, the big scene's coming up in 5 minutes because we have the light and you have to do it. Oh, it wasn't scheduled. Well, sorry, we got to go, But yeah, it does. I think that is a result of theater and that attitude.
So now you're prepared for the EGOT.
For the EGOT.
We didn't know that you were...
Yeah, I've been preparing for that.
Not everybody knew you could sing. I mean, this was kind of the great sensation of first Little Shop and now and then Sunday in the Park. Is like, you're a singer.
It's funny, as it's a discovery, I guess, for people, but for me, it's been the thing that I've done probably more confidently, and the real love of my life. I mean, I've been singing since I was a kid.
Huh.
This is the thing. It's like you talk about craft and what it takes to be a performer, what it takes to be an actor. There were times when everyone had to have all of those skills, and it's the thing I think about a lot and I talk a lot about, because there seems to be this kind of this sort of, people are in awe of the process of an actor, and I think like that's the process. That's what every actor should do. They go, well, I hear you do a lot of preparation and you spend a couple months really working on a character, and I'm like, that's what every actor there should be. Preparation and discipline is a huge part of it, and craft is everything. It's weird. It's a strange time, how we define this profession. Mm-hmm. And back in the day, I felt like people could sing and dance and act, and they had to, and it was necessary, and I have profound respect for that. Profound respect. The craft of acting is a very interesting one to me, and something that I don't always feel is around acting as much anymore these days. The idea of immersing yourself into something, learning about life and what's actually happening in reality, is what makes acting so interesting to me. not sort of using it as a way of avoiding reality. I like getting in there and seeing what people are doing every day and learning. You know, like I don't think you should ever stop learning, and that's the goal, not just about acting, but about the world. So that's what I try and do, and that's what I'm blessed to be able to do.
Yeah, well,
But you're definitely making choices that are pushing yourself. I mean, it's not you do not have the traditional actor's path,
No?
or movie actor's path. At least not in the last 3 or 4 years. Certainly, you've been.
Yeah, I am. I guess I am who I am, you know, and so I've just tried to follow that. And I think as I follow that, I guess I've done things that only I would do. I don't know. Like, I guess that's how it works. I
Tribute
think
to the
you
art.
can't get rid of you, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah. Well,
You know, I feel like the challenge is just moment to moment. I don't think the challenge has to be so big. I think it's like if you get a big long email from somebody and then you go, oh shit, I have to respond to them in another big long email. You'll never write them back.
Right.
And I think that's the pressure that people put on themselves. They say all these big events are happening, people's lives are changed, sometimes lives have been destroyed, and I need to go and I need to make a grandiose gesture, and I think that is very important. But I think what's even more important are the little tiny moments, the moments that we have with each other, the responsibility that we have to each other, the people in our lives, the moment to moment, the holding the door, the listening to someone when you're distracted. And I think that's a really, really important distinction, that, we have this tendency as people to say we have to be charitable in this huge way. I mean, that makes you feel fantastic when you are.
Right.
But what also makes you feel fantastic is being kind to someone in one moment, by driving down the road and letting a car pass you instead of racing them down the road, or, tiny stupid things you would consider, but that's a practice. And I think when that moment of grabbing your phone instead of taking a moment to take a breath, like, that's a huge triumph. And it doesn't have to be, there is a hierarchy of giving, but I think that you have to start somewhere. If you set those goals that high, you're never going to do them. I put my head down and I do my work. And it's really, that's been the big thing. And does it taste any different? It does. The promise of filling some hole and some sense of adoration is not here. It's about working for something that's more important, and that's his story. So yeah, it does feel better. It feels a lot better, because you don't buy into the illusion of, I think maybe what I used to buy into. I decided to approach my work in a different way. I felt like my life was growing even more important than my work, and then ironically, as I took my life more seriously, in a way, my work became even more serious to me. And I realized that the 6 months of preparation I did for that movie informed my life, and then the 22 days that we shot that movie in was a blip. I mean, strangely, was less important than the 6 months that I spent preparing. And I sort of came to this conclusion that my work is a way of somewhere really learning about my own life and about the world around me. And my mother always told me that was what, hopefully, ideally, if you're lucky enough, that's what your work should be. And I reached that point where I said, oh my God, I have this job where I can go into other people's worlds and really learn about them, and things that I had judgments about, things that I love deeply. Sometimes they flipped completely, You have a judgment about what somebody does, then you start doing research and you fall in love with it. And you realize, whoa, I had no idea how much I would, love playing a police officer and respect what they do, and know that they're human beings there, I mean, there's so many examples. This is your life. Don't pretend like you're going to do your work and then you're going to go back to your life. This job, it becomes your life, and you have to assimilate both into each other. And oddly, the characters that I've played or the people I've met along the way have become a real part of my life, and they're really, truly my friends.